I rubbed my temples. Going downstairs is easy, but going upstairs is hard, especially when it's the 16th floor.
If you don't want to go back upstairs, you can stay in my car. As long as you don't step outside, it should be safe. But
Lu Zhou hesitated, as if wanting to say something but stopping. Once the car runs out of gas, I'll still have to get out for some air. By then, not only will I have to endure the scorching heat, but I might also get carbon monoxide poisoning from breathing it in.
I'll go upstairs.
After weighing my options, I made a decision. The two of us got out of the car. Just then, a mother and daughter were walking by. I tried to kindly persuade them, but the woman didn't even glance at me and kept walking inside. I didn't say anything more. I had fulfilled my duty to warn them. There was no need to play the saint. As we walked upstairs, we ran into Xiao Chen from property management. We reminded her that it would be best to notify the people in the parking lot to be careful about carbon monoxide poisoning from excessive levels. Xiao Chen paused, muttered something softly, and suddenly leaned in, close to Lu Zhou's ear. She whispered a few words to him, and I saw Lu Zhou's expression shift from confusion, to surprise, and then to shock.
if what you say is true, then good luck, brother.
Xiao Chen patted Lu Zhou on the shoulder and hurriedly left. Lu Zhou turned around, his face grave, and large beads of sweat rolled down his forehead.
Xiao Chen just said that the thermometer at the property management office shows that it's not 48 degrees outside right now, but 56 degrees.
What does 56 degrees even mean? The coronavirus can only survive for 30 minutes at 56 degrees. I'm gasping for breath, and so is he. In this tiny space, all you can hear is the sound of the two of us breathing heavily. The temperature around us is rising, and every inhale and exhale feels like we're in a sauna, waves of heat, waves of discomfort. That number is just too shocking. I suspect Lu Zhou must have misheard. Maybe it was something like 46 degrees. Even 46 degrees would be terrifying. How could the temperature possibly rise to 56 degrees in such a short time, making the air so thin? After climbing so many flights, I feel like my whole body is about to catch fire. Lu Zhou didn't answer. He opened a bottle of water, drank half of it, and poured the other half over his head. His face was flushed red from the heat, and even his dark circles had disappeared. I took out the last bottle of water I had left in my bag, drank half of it as well, and handed the rest over to the influencer. The bottle of mineral water was pressed right up against a duck that was about 80% thawed, so it was a bit chilled, which helped clear my head a little. I tried to use what little brainpower I had left after being roasted by the heat to think. It's now around 4:30 in the afternoon, and there's at least another hour and a half before the sun sets. Without air conditioning, the temperature difference between indoors and outdoors is usually about 3 to 5 degrees, which means if I go home, I could very well be roasted by temperatures over 50 degrees Celsius. Just then, I suddenly heard the sharp sound of glass shattering. The intense heat had warped the metal window frame, causing the glass to shatter, and an even hotter wave of air instantly rushed in. Without thinking, we quickened our pace. By the time we reached the 13th floor, I was already exhausted, like a dog. Panting with my tongue out, I clung to the scorching hot railing, my legs so stiff I could barely move. Lu Zhou turned back and grabbed me, dragging me upward. The heat felt almost tangible, like a fire dragon chasing us relentlessly, spewing out 1,000-degree flames that could incinerate us at any moment. At last, we reached the final floor. I was practically crawling by then, and even my palms burned painfully when I pressed them to the ground. But even screaming hurt my throat so much that I just wanted to get inside as quickly as possible. Lu Zhou fumbled frantically for the keys, but couldn't seem to find them. I tugged at the hem of his shirt from behind, and pointed to my apartment door.
The code is 0726.
Fortunately, the code lock hadn't been ruined by the heat yet, and we tumbled inside in a rush. Greedily, we breathed in the last traces of cool air inside. What a huge freezer, I heard Lu Zhou exclaim in delight. Going home was the right choice. I had stocked up on so much food, and, worried about a water outage, I had also stored a large amount of water in the bathroom. We should be able to make it through the remaining hour or so without any problems. A moment later, Lu Zhou and I were lying in the bathtub filled with water, with a few chickens floating in it. There were supplies placed all over the bathroom. The scene looked a bit comical, but as long as it worked, that was all that mattered. At least the temperature in the bathroom had dropped to a bearable level.
You really are something. Did you freeze all that meat in the freezer because you were afraid of a zombie outbreak?
Lu Zhou joked as he played with the rubber duck in the water.
I'd actually prefer a zombie outbreak. At least then I could hole up at home for a few months without worrying about dying from the heat.
I replied coldly, looking out the window. Maybe because it's small and on the shady side, this window hasn't cracked from the heat yet. The golden city reflected outside looks so unreal. If this is a dream, I hope I wake up soon. 2 hours later, the sun finally set. The rooftops of the city lost their golden luster, and darkness gradually enveloped the land. Lu Zhou opened the door and stepped out of the bathroom, taking a deep breath last. It had cooled down. Suddenly, my eyes closed involuntarily, and I lost consciousness completely. When I opened my eyes again, the first thing I saw was the living room. I was lying on the sofa in the living room. I must have passed out for the whole night. Lu Zhou walked over and handed me a bottle of drink.
You're awake. The water was cut off in the middle of the night yesterday, and it still hasn't come back. There's no signal on the phone either.
I fell silent. If today is as hot as yesterday, it's going to be even harder to get through.
Let me tell you some good news. The radio function on the phone still works. Before the battery runs out, we can still listen to the news. I still have 1% left.
Attention all citizens. Please try to stay at home during the day. Make sure to stay hydrated and do not go outside. Wait for rescue. The highest temperature in this heat disaster could reach 60 degrees.
My phone ran out of battery and shut off automatically. I stared at it numbly. 60 degrees as the highest temperature. That number made me wonder if I was living on the flaming mountains.
Do you have a power bank, dear?
I walked into the study and took out 2 power banks. Just as I was about to bring them to him, a sudden flash of inspiration struck me. I hurriedly rummaged through the box hidden under the bed.
What's this?
Lu Zhu asked.
A home solar charging device.
What?
A home solar charging device. I bought it before but never opened it.
I really have to admire myself. Over the past few years, after getting promoted to management and earning quite a bit, I just kept buying all sorts of things. Whenever I saw something interesting or thought it might be useful, I would buy it and bring it home. If I remember correctly, I bought this solar charging device a year and a half ago. Back then, I was planning to get an RV and go traveling, but I was discouraged by the lack of parking spots. Still, I had already bought quite a few wilderness survival gadgets in advance.
Sis, you're amazing. I can't believe you have something this cool.
Lu Zhou got excited when he heard this too. We quickly helped unpack it and set it up according to the instructions. Half an hour later, before the sun came up, we placed the solar charging panel on the bay window in the bedroom, pulled the curtains closed, dragged a freezer into the bedroom, and set up all the small fans. As the sun slowly rose, golden sunlight once again bathed the earth, and the temperature began to rise. Lu Zhou glanced at me, and I nodded. He decisively pressed the switch. The buzzing sound of the appliances starting up, along with the whirring of the small fans, was like music to our ears. When we first bought the freezer, I figured we didn't need rapid freezing, so I bought a lower-powered model. As long as the solar charging panel holds up, keeping it running shouldn't be a problem. Right now, the freezer is packed with drinks and bottled water. Some are mine, and some are what Lu Zhou brought over from his place. He said he's a gaming streamer. He often doesn't leave the house for 10 days or even half a month at a time, so he has quite a lot of supplies at home. We took inventory of all the food. The ice cream had completely melted, and since it was too much trouble to deal with, I just threw it away. Originally, the freezer contained 6 chickens, 3 ducks, half a pig, about 5 pounds of steak, and 2 fish. And a bag of shrimp. In this kind of weather, it's really hard to keep all this meat fresh, so we decided to just lay it all out on the balcony floor before it started to rot. We're hoping that today's high temperatures will dry it out into jerky, making it easier to preserve. The leafy vegetables, after last night's heat, are pretty much all spoiled, and are giving off a really unpleasant smell. We didn't dare eat them. Getting sick from diarrhea just isn't worth it. So we had to throw them out on the balcony too, sprinkled some salt on them to see if we could dry them into preserved vegetables. As for the eggs, I wrapped them simply in some clothes, and put them on the balcony rack, hoping the sun would cook them. While checking our snacks, I found that 2 bags of chips had burst open. They were baked so hard and brittle, that I grabbed a bag, and collected all the pieces from the floor. The ones with intact packaging, along with the other snacks, cookies and bread, I moved all into the bedroom. The canned food and rice are still in the kitchen cabinets for now. Then there was a bag of apples. Since they were still fresh, we decided to eat them quickly. So this is our food supply for the next couple of days.
Sis, you're amazing. I can't believe you hid so much food at home.
Lu Zhu exclaimed in admiration, and I got goosebumps all over.
Don't call me sis. Just use my name.
Ching ching, sis.
Shut up or I'll kick you out.
We read a whole book, and even with this simple cooling device, by the afternoon the 2 of us were sweating buckets just sitting there, and our books were soaked with sweat. What? A calm mind keeps you cool. That simply doesn't exist in the face of extreme heat. Fortunately, we managed to get through it. In the evening, we charged our phones, turned on the radio, and listened for a bit, still feeling a lingering sense of fear. If it weren't for that life-saving solar charging device, Lu Zhou and I really don't know how we would have made it. After it got dark, we used our phone flashlights to bring all the meat from the balcony inside. On the way out, I almost slipped because the floor was covered in fat that had been rendered out by the heat. The aroma of the meat was overwhelming, and even the covers couldn't contain it. I was a bit worried that it might attract people with bad intentions. We were extremely cautious for several days, and I couldn't sleep well at night, but fortunately, no one else showed up. Every night, I slept on the bed while Lu Zhou slept on the floor beside me. A week later, one night while I was sleeping, a sudden bang woke me up with a start. I sat up abruptly. Looking out the window, I realized it wasn't fireworks at all, but an explosion in a building across the street. Flames split the darkness. Lately, I've often heard explosions and seen flashes of fire and black smoke at night, but they were always far away from me. This was the closest one yet. Another loud bang shook the glass, and I screamed, jumped out of bed, and rushed out. By the time I realized what I was doing, I was already clinging to Lu Zhou's waist, trembling uncontrollably.
It's okay. The fire is in the building across the street. It can't reach us here.
He reached out a bit stiffly to touch my hair. I shuddered and suddenly pushed him away.
Fangqing!
Don't come over.
Come on, it's fine, it's fine. I gritted my teeth and went into the bathroom. I quickly shut the door. The fire in the building across the street was now fully ablaze. It felt like I could hear the crackling sounds and people screaming.
Fangqing, are you okay?
Lu Zhou knocked on the door twice. I crouched down, hugged my knees, and covered my ears. The explosion sounds that lingered in my mind mixed with Lu Zhou's knocking, washing over me like a downpour. I'm fine.
Fangqing, I'm right outside. Don't worry, nothing will happen. Calm down for a moment.
Lu Zhou seemed to be saying something like that. The knocking stopped. I couldn't really hear clearly. I just crouched there, looking through the window at the growing flames in the building across from me. Someone rushed out from the fire. Like birds without wings, they plunged straight down. Someone appeared at a window, waving a flashlight desperately for help. Others tried to escape from the upper floors using ropes, but it was useless. The flames only grew larger, eventually engulfing the entire building. The fire blazed into the sky. Ironically, the building across from us was consumed by a raging inferno, while hell was less than 100 meters away from here. But the temperature barely rose at all. I just held She like that, eyes wide open until dawn. The fire raged all night long, and by morning it still hadn't been completely extinguished. Then, there was a knock at the door.
Fangqing, it's me. I'm Lu Zhou. Can you see if it's raining outside?
They said it was raining, but in reality, it was just a few scattered drops. If you didn't look closely, you wouldn't even notice it was rain, because most of it evaporated before it even hit the ground. Half an hour later, I looked down from the balcony. The ground was still golden yellow. The sun had come out, and the temperature was rising as usual. It turned out the artificial rain was happening next door, and we just caught a bit of it. Lu Zhou stood behind me with his phone. Even though such a small amount of rain didn't help much, the fact that there was artificial rainfall meant the authorities were still functioning. As long as we held on, there would eventually come a day when the temperature dropped. We can't lose faith in survival. I carried over 2 more boxes of water. The extreme heat shouldn't last much longer. It should be over soon. Across the street, several spots kept reigniting, thick smoke billowing up and covering part of the sky. Sunlight filtered through the black haze, casting a vivid red glow. There was still a ring of orange light around us, radiating a menacing aura. Faced with such a scene, both of us were a bit distracted. We tried playing cards, but kept forgetting what had just happened, and eventually gave up, each picking up a book to read instead. At one point, I went to the bathroom and noticed that there was barely any water left in the bathtub for flushing the toilet. The wash basin and buckets were all completely empty. Over the past few days, in order to save water, we had tacitly agreed to only flush the toilet after a number 2. For bathing, we just wiped ourselves down with a damp towel. But with time passing and the high temperatures, the water evaporated quickly. With so little water left for the toilet, we decided to flush just once a day. Lu Zhou gave a wry smile when he heard this, but didn't refuse. We all knew this was the only option left. Fortunately, in the middle of the night 3 days later, we finally got some rain. It was artificial rainfall again, but this time, it fell over our city, and the rain in the suburbs was pretty heavy too. We couldn't hide our excitement. The 2 of us put everything that could possibly catch rainwater out on the balcony, trying to save as much water as we could. We also grabbed towels and hurried to take a shower and wash our hair. I could hear joyful laughter coming from both upstairs and downstairs. Clearly, there were still many people holding on in this building. Half an hour later, the rain stopped. It came quickly, and left just as fast. The buckets were less than a third full. But it brought enough coolness and hope. Lu Zhou and I opened 2 cans of canned yellow peaches as a reward for ourselves. The extreme heat had already affected our appetites, and now, with the half-dried side of pork not yet finished drying, we didn't touch it at all. We only ate a few ducks and chickens. At least we never ran out of drinking water or beverages. Before the disaster, I had stocked up on drinks from the supermarket, and I still haven't finished them. If we just hang in there a bit longer, we'll definitely make it through. After changing into clean clothes, there was even more good news. My phone signal came back, and a flood of text messages poured in immediately. In order not to miss any news from the outside world, even when there was no signal before, we all made sure to fully charge our phones every day. I picked up my phone and glanced at the messages. They were mostly safety alerts and high temperature warnings. There were also some notifications from the authorities about shelter locations. We hurriedly called our parents.
I'm fine here, everything's okay. I have enough water to drink, and enough food to eat. You must take good care of yourselves. If nothing's wrong, don't worry about me.
But no matter what, I just couldn't get through to my parents. I was so anxious that I started to cry. Through all these hard days, I hadn't cried, not even when I was scared by the big fire in the building across from me. But when I realized I couldn't reach my parents, who were thousands of miles away, I just couldn't hold back my tears. Lu Zhou saw a pair of slightly stiff but warm arms gently wrap around me. I shrank back a little, my body trembling slightly.
Don't be afraid, it's me. I won't hurt you. Your parents must just be in a place where the signal hasn't come back yet. They're definitely anxious to get in touch with you too. Once the phone signal comes back, it will definitely come back a second time. We need to be patient and wait a little longer, okay?
Although his embrace was awkward and his words of comfort weren't anything new, I still gradually calmed down in the sound of his voice.
Okay, let's wait a little longer.
However, in the days that followed, there was still no good news. Because the temperature quickly rose again, even higher than before the artificial rainfall. The Earth was about to explode, or rather, humanity could no longer survive on the surface. Lu Zhou walked past me carrying 2 boxes of bottled water. The bottles, warped by the heat, were all misshapen, and one was about to fall out of the plastic bag. I quickly reached out to steady it, still wondering how he could possibly have so much bottled water at home. Over these days, he must have moved at least a dozen boxes. I helped him carry the bottled water into the bedroom, putting them one by one into the freezer. During the hottest days lately, I've honestly wished I could crawl into the freezer myself. I took out a bottle of drink, and handed him one as well. We happily opened the caps together, and took a big gulp. The drinks had been in the freezer overnight, and drinking them was incredibly refreshing. In this heat, we needed the cold air from the freezer to cool down, but we couldn't keep it completely closed, and on top of that, its power wasn't enough. The layer of ice in the freezer had already melted long ago, and now it was about as cool as the fridge compartment. Only at night would it get a bit colder. If we didn't drink it now, the chill would soon dissipate anyway. After we finished drinking, we lay down on the floor, staring at the ceiling. Suddenly, I seemed to see everything around me sway a few times. I thought it was just the heat making me dizzy. I rubbed my eyes, but the shaking only got worse. It was an earthquake. In a flash, you scrambled up, grabbed my arm, and practically dragged me off the floor, suddenly shoving me into the bathroom next to the bedroom. You rushed in after me, frantically looking around. Inside the bathroom, because we hadn't flushed the toilet. It smelled terrible, but that was nothing compared to the panic brought on by the earthquake. The quake struck suddenly, and with great force. I'd heard that long droughts can trigger earthquakes, but I'd only ever seen bits and pieces about it online, and never really looked into it. After so many days of extreme heat, our overheated brains hadn't thought of it either. It caught us completely off guard. The building shook, then settled, then shook again. Next, it jolted up and down, as if a giant serpent was passing beneath us. I screamed and clung to the only person I could hold on to. Lu Zhou, much taller than me, bent down and held me tightly in his arms, shielding me as we staggered back and forth through the quake. We kept bumping into the walls, and almost fell into the bathtub. When the earthquake finally stopped, all I could hear was the frantic pounding of my heart, and our ragged, winded breaths. The building was still standing, but the bathroom door was crooked, and my dad had slumped to the floor. This was the aftermath of the earthquake. The earthquake broke the solar panels that had been our lifeline, and there was no way to fix them, since 2/3 of them were smashed and the electrical box caught fire. It took us a lot of effort to finally find a fire extinguisher, and put out the flames in the bedroom, which was a complete mess. After putting out the fire, we had almost no strength left, and we both collapsed onto the floor. The sun was shining in the sky. It glared at us with a vicious gaze again. I could feel the fine hairs on my face curling up and burning in the intense heat, burrowing into my pores, and causing waves of stinging pain. In a few more hours, the high temperature would kill us. After a while, I got up from the floor, and started pulling out the water and drinks from the freezer. I simply told him to push the freezer away from the window, and place it at the foot of the bed, then throw all the drinks inside onto the bed. After that, I climbed in myself. I saw Lu Zhou turn and go into the bathroom, pour the last bit of water into the freezer, and then squeeze in as well. The whole process took less than 5 minutes. But the temperature around us had already reached a point where even breathing had to be done with extreme caution, as if taking a deep breath would suck in a fireball. Although the freezer was quite large, it was still a tight fit for 2 adults. I shifted my position, moved to his side, and curled up in his arms, allowing his knees to bend so he could lie down in a rather cramped posture. I don't know how much time had passed when the temperature began to rise, accompanied by waves of aftershocks. I wasn't sure if it was just my imagination, but suddenly I heard the sound of raindrops. I quickly climbed out of the freezer to take a look, and saw heavy rain pounding against the shattered glass. The sky outside was a solid gray. Huge, heavy raindrops were falling from the sky.
Lu Zhou, it's raining. We survived. We survived.
I excitedly patted his face, trying to wake him up. His skin was burning hot to the touch. I felt his forehead. Thankfully, my noise woke him up. I saw him trembling all over. He was clearly running a fever. It took all my effort to drag him onto the bed, and I hurried to cover him with a blanket, but he kicked it off. I stood by helplessly, not knowing what to do. I had never taken care of a sick person before, and had no idea what to do. Since I lived alone, I kept some cold medicine and antibiotics at home. Unfortunately, because of the previous pandemic, I hadn't managed to stock up on any fever reducers. After hesitating for a moment, I took out a box of antibiotics and paired it with some vitamins. I went back to the bedside and fed him the medicine with a drink. Fortunately, he was a cooperative patient and let me do as I pleased. After finishing all this, I let him sleep, and turned to pick up the bucket and wash basin from the floor, planning to collect as much rainwater as possible to store. Raindrops kept beating against the window. A dull sound echoed, varying pitches interweaving. In the distance, the wind rumbled, sometimes loud, sometimes soft, like rolling thunder. I carefully navigated obstacles on the floor, approaching the balcony with caution. As I set down the bucket and wash basin, I looked up, catching sight of the distant scene. My eyes widened in shock, my whole body rigid. As far as the eye could see, a massive, churning yellow dragon was surging forward in the distance, unstoppable in its advance. The white dragon was being relentlessly engulfed and tossed about. Wherever it passed, towering buildings collapsed with a thunderous crash, while lower structures were continuously swallowed up. Overwhelmed, what I heard was not thunder at all, but the sound of a raging flood demolishing building after building. It couldn't have just started raining. How could there possibly be such a massive flood already? This is inland, so it can't be a tsunami from intense heat and an earthquake. How could these buildings withstand the flood's powerful impact? They all collapsed, with only a few scattered ones still standing, swaying precariously in the wind and rain. It's only a matter of time before they fall too. The ground shook, and the building trembled more. The flood was very close. My legs went weak, and I almost collapsed. Forcing myself upright, I made my way to the bedroom. Lu Zhong was woken by the noise and stared at me in shock. Amid crashing sounds, the light fixture above us suddenly fell. It landed straight on the comforter, right at the junction between the wardrobe and the wall, releasing a piercing, shrill noise. Then, the entire bed was flipped over. I felt as if I had already been thrown out, crashing into something, before a hand suddenly yanked me back. It was Lu Zhou grabbing my hand. But amid the deafening noise, I couldn't hear his voice at all. We tumbled through the air as we fell, the ground beneath us still shaking. I opened my eyes. The building hadn't collapsed, only the outer wall was gone.
Let's hurry to the 16th floor. This building has 33 floors, and the 16th floor is right in the middle. It's the safest spot during an earthquake, and it's also the highest point the local fire department's ladder can reach.
At that moment, we saw a helicopter passing by outside, and hope instantly welled up in our hearts. Suddenly, a wardrobe in the room toppled over like a domino, crashing down on Lu Zhou and pinning him underneath. With the sound of the floodwaters getting closer and closer, I couldn't worry about Lu Zhou's cries of pain. I rushed toward the 16th floor as fast as I could. Debris from the building kept falling in the stairwell, but I finally made it to the balcony on the 16th floor, safe but shaken. Just then, the rescue helicopter flew by. I shouted at the top of my lungs, and the helicopter noticed me and lowered a rope. But the moment I grabbed the rope, the building completely collapsed. I was saved.